Hello and welcome. This is class number 12 of our PSIR series, also called as Decoding PSIR through answer writing. This series is specially designed for those who have taken PSIR as an optional subject in the UPSC exam or those who plan to take PSIR as an optional subject. In this series, every Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, we have a class at 4 p.m. where we discuss a previous year question that UPSC has asked. Now, we don't just discuss a previous year question, we rather first go into detail of the topic from which the question was asked, and then study that and then try and answer that question. The reason being that these kind of questions often get repeated by the UPSC after a few years, so there's a good probability that you might get these questions asked once again. Before we begin, if you have not subscribed to the channel so far, please do hit the subscribe button. If you want the PDF of these classes, you can join the Telegram channel. The link of the channel is again in the description of the video. Do click on that and you will be able to get PDF of all these classes. Now, without any further delay, let's begin. Let's see what is the question that we will be answering today. So UPSC in 2018 asked this long question. It's a 250 words question, 20 marks. The question was, what do you understand by 3 generations of human rights? From where does it take or where does it lie in our syllabus? If you look at the syllabus of paper 1, part A. Paper 1 part A has a topic called rights. This is where we study about human rights. We study about different types of rights, legal rights, social rights, economic rights, etc. But the most important ones are the human rights. Now, as the question suggests, there are 3 different generations of human rights from time to time. This is what the question is asking you. Now, in these kind of questions, you cannot really make up anything from your own mind, because these kind of questions are not asking you for any new interpretation. They're asking you to tell about an existing fact. Either you know it or you don't know it, and that is where it becomes slightly tricky. If you don't know it, that becomes problematic for you. So what exactly are these? Let's see. First, let's try and understand the concept of human rights. Basically, there are a lot of different theories of rights given. For example, there's a theory of legal rights. Legal rights, for example, say that these are the rights given to you by the law. If someone violates these rights, you have the right to go to the court because that person has broken the law. However, human rights say that for these rights, these are so basic that you do not require any law for these rights. The rights that you have just by the virtue of being born as a human being. Because you are born as a human being, you deserve certain rights. Those rights are called human rights. As simple as that. Because you are born as a human being, you do not need any government to give you these rights. You do not need anyone to give you these rights. These have to be given in common to every human being. Doesn't matter where the human being is or was born. Doesn't matter the financial standing of the human being. Doesn't matter the gender, the intelligence, whatever is the case, that does not matter. As long as you are a human being, you deserve these rights. Those are called human rights. So the most basic of the rights. We'll discuss about how human rights came into being. But let's first go into the idea of exactly how rights as a theory came up. Now, there are different versions of how rights as a theory came up. Rights in simple terms means what do you deserve, or this is something that I want and I will get it. No one can take it away from me. This is the simple version of rights. Now, there are different theories. One of them is called natural rights. Natural rights again are similar to human rights only. Natural rights are rights given to you by nature. So if something is given to you by nature, the government should not be allowed to take it away. Right to life is given to you by nature. The government did not give you the right to life. Right to roam around freely, given to you by nature. The government did not give you the right to roam around freely. So how can they take it away? So this concept of natural rights came up in the Middle Ages. It's a Greco-Roman concept. Human rights, as I said, are considered to be universal. Now, in the modern generation, if you talk about how and why human rights came into picture, you have to go back to something called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Universal Declaration of Human Rights, also called as UDHR. Now, what exactly is this Universal Declaration of Human Rights? After the World War II ended, the UN came into being in 1945. One of the first matters of discussion amongst the UN members was that a lot of countries have been destroyed. People of a lot of countries who have faced wars are facing a lot of issues. They also deserve certain rights. Only the powerful and the rich and the developed countries should not be the only ones to give rights to their citizens. Even if someone is living in a poor country, even if someone is living in a dictatorship, they also deserve certain rights. They should be equal for everyone. That is when the UN in 1948 came up with something called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is the document that you see on your screen. It has 30 articles. Mostly one-liner articles, very similar to the human rights, very similar to fundamental rights that you see in India. Right to freedom of life, freedom of religion, these kind of things are written here. But this was the first ever declaration at the world stage that universally there should be at least some bare minimum rights which should be available for everyone without any discrimination. This lady that you see here is Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt, wife of late American President Franklin D. Roosevelt. She played a major role in discussing about this. She was a person behind this idea of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So human rights, as I said, Universal Declaration was made in 1948. However, that is not the point of the question. The question is asking about what are the different generations of rights. Now, what do you mean by generation of rights? See, with every passing generation, our demands keep on changing. Today, a kid may demand that, oh, I want more screen time, I want my own mobile phone, I want my own iPhone. 30 years back, the kids at that time were not demanding this. 30 years back, maybe they were demanding, I just want to go out and play, I want to go out and be in the ground, etc. for a longer period of time. Go back even more, go back 30 years even further, and then the demand should be different. So depending upon different generations, depending upon where we are as a society, the demands of the people keep on changing. And this is how different generations of human rights have been formed. Now, who actually gave this idea? The person who gave this idea is Karel Vecek. He is a Czech-French philosopher or basically a political philosopher. He has been teaching also, so he is half Czech, half French. He is a person behind this idea. So, how did he divide the different generations of human rights? First generation, these are called civil and political rights. As the name suggests, these rights basically came up at the time of English Revolution, French Revolution, American Revolution, when the people, the common people, did not have the most basic political rights that we have today. For example, right to vote, right to contest elections, the most basic social rights like right to own your property, right to life, a kind of promise by the government, by the state that they will not take away my life randomly. Those are the first generation of rights where the people first started demanding something. These are called civil and political rights. Again, the underlying theme is liberty. Because liberty was in short supply at that point of time. A lot of these countries were ruled by the kings. They did not give any liberty, any freedom to the common population. And that is when the first generation of right came into picture. Examples include right to freedom of thought, freedom of religion, freedom of movement, freedom against arrest, the most basic rights. A lot of them form a part of our fundamental rights in our Indian constitution. These are seen as negative rights. What do you mean by negative rights? Negative right means government promises I will not do it. For example, government should promise they will not arrest me randomly. Government should promise they will not restrict my liberty. Government should promise they will not randomly take away my life. Government should promise they will not randomly acquire my property. So basically negative right means it puts restrictions on the state. Restrictions on the state. Similar to how our fundamental rights work. That the state cannot do this, they cannot discriminate, they cannot do this, etc. etc. So these are negative connotations. Then comes a second generation of human rights. The second generation of human rights is believed to emerge after the Second World War, where there was mass scale destruction around the entire world. Even the countries that won the war had a huge damage in their infrastructure. So countries such as UK, France, they may have won the war, but the infrastructure was gone. They faced loss of billions and billions of euros. And this is when we had a second generation of human rights coming up. This was mainly rights that demanded right to work, right to healthcare, right to education, right to social security, etc. These are mostly economic, social and cultural rights. So the most basic requirement was fulfilled by the first generation, that at least I should be allowed to live, I should be allowed to move freely. Then we move to a second generation where, okay, I'm living now, but now I need to work. I need to have healthcare from the government. So this is positive right. Means it is not about the government putting restrictions, it is about the government giving me something. Government should do it. It puts an obligation on the government that you should take the effort, or you should make the effort to actually do this. So it is about right to work. The government should allow people to work. Right to healthcare. The government should set up proper healthcare facilities. Right to education. We should all have free education up till a certain level. Right to social security. If I am ill or if I am unable to work, I should still get some support from the government, so on and so forth. These are the second generation of human rights. So the first one were mainly social political. Second one are economic, social and cultural rights. Both of these are individual rights. In both of these cases, you will see that it is about the individuals that they are demanding something. Third generation are called solidarity rights. Solidarity rights. So basically, how these are different is, solidarity rights are not for individuals, they are rights for the entire community. Third generation rights are concerned with social groups, society as a whole rather than individual, and thus they are called as collective rights. For example, when the developing countries collectively demand that they should not be forced to cut down their emissions, they are not demanding for one single person, they are not demanding for an individual that he should be allowed to pollute. No, they are demanding as a whole that we are a developing country, or we are a least developed country right now, and we still need more manufacturing, we still need more development, so we should not be asked to curtail our manufacturing. So they are asking or demanding this as a whole. This is called solidarity rights. Similarly, right to peace means right to not be dragged in a war. Right to environmental protection. When people say environment should be protected, it's not an individual demanding. It is an entire society, it's an entire collective of the people who would benefit with a cleaner environment. Right to self-determination. All these, self-determination basically means if there is a conflict, for example, let's say between the two sides, people should get the right to decide. They should get the right to decide rather than someone else, some politician deciding for them. These are third generation rights called solidarity rights. So these are the three generation of rights that the question is asking about. Now that you know this, it's an extremely easy question to answer. The first one, political rights. Second one, basically socio-economic, cultural rights. And third one, the solidarity rights. This discrimination, as I told you, or this differentiation rather, was given by Karl Vasak, French political thinker who died recently. I think in 2015 he passed away, so very recent. Simple. And then a bit more information about, as we discussed, Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948 and some other treaties have been signed from time to time to protect human rights of people. However, there have still been many violations in the past. We still see civil wars, we still see countries attacking each other. For that, international mechanisms have been set up like International Criminal Court, etc. But we all know how effective they are. We all know how powerful their summon or their arrest warrant is. This is the present condition of human rights. So now, I think we are ready to write this particular answer. Pretty easy, straightforward now that you know this. So question was simple. What do you understand by three generation of human rights? Pretty simple, straightforward. So now we will start first by giving an introduction. Who gave this theory? So Karl Vasak. gave this story, he gave the concept of 3 generations of human rights. First generation focused on liberty. It was civil and political rights. Emphasized the fact that we should have basic freedom given to everyone, including freedom of life, liberty, freedom of speech and expression, right to vote, etc. You can also write how these rights emerged since the French Revolution, American Revolution, etc. Because since then the people have been demanding the basic freedom. Second generation, social, economic, cultural rights. This is basically about real freedom and not just basic necessities. You can give examples here as well. Examples such as employment generation means right to work, right to education, equal pay, maternity relief, etc. Third generation, as we discussed, are the solidarity or the collective rights. Now, also understand here, you can see this even today. Different countries are in different states of evolution. For example, look at a country like Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, women for a long time, till very recently, were not even allowed to drive. Women were not allowed to drive, only males could drive. And compare that to a country such as India. Obviously, there is no discrimination on that count. So while Saudi Arabia had this entire agitation, and now they have allowed women to drive, they had this entire agitation that we want our right or we want equality. So what Saudi Arabia is fighting for, or what women in Saudi Arabia are fighting for, may be first generation rights. On the other hand, in a developed country where first generation, second generation rights have already been given, in a developed country they may be fighting for third generation rights, like right to peace, like there should not be any war. For example, it's in countries such as US where you see people coming out on the streets with posters, we want peace and war should stop. You will not see these things in India. In India, we are still stuck at, let's say, second generation of rights. We are not demanding rights as a whole community, we are still demanding second generation of rights. In a developed country where first and second generation rights have already been taken care of, then they move on to third generation rights. So it's not that we are moving together as a whole, all the countries are not moving forward together. Some countries are still stuck at first generation rights where people are still demanding that their first generation rights should be fulfilled. Those who have gone through that phase, they move on to second generation. Those who move on from that, then they move on to the third generation. So depending upon that, that is how it usually works. Then you can conclude by giving a bit of information about these rights, how first 2 generation of rights were given recognition by Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other treaties such as Civil and Political Rights and Social Economic Rights Covenants in 1966. If you want, you can give India specific example as well, how our Supreme Court also has expanded fundamental rights in India from time to time, expanding Article 19, Article 21 to include right to clean air, etc. Very recently, we saw a judgment in the Supreme Court where right to clean environment has been considered as a part of Article number 21. That is how you can conclude this. This brings us to the end of this particular discussion. I hope you learned something new today. See, if you understand the topic, it's not a difficult question to answer. If you understand the topic, it's not a difficult paper to attempt anyway. And that is what we are trying to do here. Invite your other friends also who have PSIR as an optional subject. Do hit the subscribe button if you have not done so far. Do hit the like button also. I'll see you in the next one very soon. Till then, bye-bye. Jai Hind.